Alright, so this is just an idea I had. I was playing Tears of the Kingdom for my third time and thinking, man, this is an amazing game. So just checking up on things like the numbers, stuff like that. I went on Metacritic and realized that the Metacritic score for the user reviews was 8.5, which might not seem like much, but when you have a game that has a 96 from the critics, it does stand out that the user score is so significantly low. So I decided to check out the reviews. There are a lot of 10s, there's a lot of zeros. It seems like there's a lot of people fighting, a review bombing is going on. So before we begin, I just want to put it out there, do not go out and harass anybody. Like, if you like the game a lot, don't go harass these people with their awful takes. Do not harass them. Do not harass people that like the game if you don't like the game. It's not cool. But today we're going to look at what I consider some of the worst reviews I've ever seen. Most of these people probably didn't even play the game because they don't know what it is they are actually talking about. But with that said, let's go ahead and start this video. We'll start it with some of the worst, some of the funniest ones. This review from Kruto is a 0, and it says Nintendo didn't fix any of the critiques from Breath of the Wild. There are still weapons that break before the enemy does, the shrines are back, while the so-called dungeons aren't any different from the beast in Breath of the Wild. The controls got even worse, and the world, while still beautiful, doesn't have anything worthwhile to do. This is a case of somebody who obviously did not play the game, because there's plenty to do in the game, and it is a little more than just a reshuffle of Breath of the Wild. It is very much built on the same engine, but the game is it's content heavy, even more content than Breath of the Wild ever had at conception, I believe. So ridiculous take, ridiculous take from someone who's got a hate boner apparently. The next one is a 3 from Bruno JBF. Not as good as expected. The positive point is the fact that you can be creative as your imagination allows you, but Nintendo must learn that the technology evolves and powerful hardware is needed. Plus, there are some hidden messages about religion that can be disrespectful with some people. But, well, as a video game, the game feels awkward and feels laggy and blurry. As a Christian, the religious stuff he's talking about is all fictional. You shouldn't take that seriously. It's 2023. You want to talk about the hardware is not powerful for 2023, and then you're gonna give me an archaic argument like the religious is disrespectful to religion because of some messages. No, give me a break. Give me a fucking break. Grow up. The next one is a 0 from Play Hard. Zelda 720p 20 frames per second in 2023 is something you can't accept. Switch's technical issues limit the game's potential. Zelda is not an indie. Zelda is AAA and it should run at 1080p, 1440p, 4K 60 FPS, not 720 20 frames per second. The game runs at 900p, not 720p. So first off, don't fucking lie in your review. That is the worst thing you can do, is be a fucking lying asshole. Second, there's no way in hell you're going to get 4K 60 anything out of a goddamn tablet. You don't even get that out of the PlayStation 5. Most games get to like 3/4 of 4K and maybe 60 frames per second with upscale techniques. Then no game, even on the PlayStation 5, is running at 4K 60. You have to have a gaming PC like I have. Also, the game does not run at 20 frames per second. The game averages closer to 30 with some drops into the 20s. And the occasional freeze. And if your game is freezing, clean your fucking Switch. Anyway, on to the next one. This is a 0 from I Hate W Bot WW Orst G, or whatever the fuck that is. This game was a waste of time. I wasted 3 days playing this game and it's so bad. The quality isn't even close to Genshin Impact, and there's not much to do in the game. Once you finish the game, there is nothing left to do. You cannot compare this game to Genshin Impact. This game is massively bigger than Genshin Impact, has massively more to do than Genshin Impact, and is a completely different style of game. It's not the same kind of game. So that's just a terrible, terrible take. This is a 0 from DJ2828. It is way too expensive DLC with new and terrible mechanics. I really like the first or main game. This is a disappointment. Another person who has not played the game. On to the next one is a 0 from Radul. I completed Breath of the Wild and I'm almost to the end of Tears of the Kingdom. So I believe I have the right to stress my disappointment with the game. Point 1. Game feels more like a mod of the original than a true sequel. More like Breath of the Wild 1.5. On the surface, that may seem true. Anybody who's played more than a few hours of the game knows that that's not true though. Point 2. Story is again pretty shallow. Characters are one-dimensional and it's hard to care for them. If you enjoyed Breath of the Wild, but you have a problem with the characters and story of Tears of the Kingdom, something is wrong with you, because the story is more in depth. There's actually a story there. There's actual character development. Even with the most minor characters, there's character development. It's not going to be Persona 5, but it's got character development far beyond what Breath of the Wild had. Next point. It is pretty much a rehash of the old one with much more meaningless side quests and filler tasks. That's basically every game in existence, for one. For two, this game feels much more fleshed out than any other game I've been playing. Like, I played through Final Fantasy 16, although I'd give that game maybe an 8 out of 10 and say it's a fantastic game that if you are a Final Fantasy fan, if you can get past the battle system, you will enjoy it. With that said, that is a game that has really bad side quests, good lore in the side quests, but the side quests aren't fun. Tears of the Kingdom's got good side quests, in my opinion. Next point. Build system everyone is so stoked about is nothing new and is not implemented very well. I disagree. I think it's implemented incredibly well, and all you have to do is do a Google image search of contraptions built in Tears of the Kingdom. You will be quite surprised to see the type of things people are putting together, and what you can put together too if you take enough time to learn the system. Next point, final point, puzzles are too simple and formulaic for adults. I guess I'm a fucking baby, because some of these puzzles had me stumped in a way that I have not been stumped since really old school Zelda games. Like, I'm talking about Majora's Mask. Maybe some of these puzzles are some of the most stumping puzzles I've experienced in a Zelda game, and it was a pleasant surprise. So that just sounds like you haven't played the game, like pretty much everyone else on here. I wonder, maybe I'm just too old. Kids find the game fun to play. Still, I'm certain this does not deserve universal praise it is receiving from critics. Something smells fishy, because it's all a big fucking conspiracy. Because how could anybody actually enjoy the fucking game? I put over 300 hours in the game. How could I have possibly put that much time into it and enjoyed the time that I spent in it? No, it's all a big conspiracy, and I'm a part of it, even though I have no fucking say, and I'm just a small ass channel. Next, this is a 0 from Slim 1985. Screw the open world shit and keep it semi like old entries games like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask were the best Zelda formula. This is an opinionated opinion. You are allowed to feel like the older Zelda games are good, but that does not give you the right to say that the newer Zelda games are just complete trash and irredeemable in every single way. And there was nothing in there about why the game was bad, why the game did not deserve to be critically successful as it is. It just seems like somebody riding the hate train. That's something that people do with new games. They did it with Final Fantasy 16, and that's a game I feel like actually deserves some criticism. And there's criticism you can have of Tears of the Kingdom. The price is overpriced. $70 is a bit high, but you can't hold that against the game itself. You hold that against the company. You hold that against Nintendo, not the game itself. And even with that said, I feel like the game has enough content to actually justify a $70 tag compared to every other game that I've had to pay that price for, that I've had to pay $60 for. There's never been a game that I felt has been as packed as Tears of the Kingdom, and as fun to play through and as adventurous to explore. Next up, we have B Cube, who gave a 0 to the game. Largely the same as Breath of the Wild, some new features in areas, but not enough to warrant $70. Valid, semi-valid criticism. If you're going to criticize anything, criticize the price. I just wish you would criticize Nintendo. Tears of the Kingdom is to Breath of the Wild as Miles Morales is to PS4 Spider-Man. That is bullshit. That is complete bullshit, because Tears of the Kingdom has nearly twice as much content in it as Breath of the Wild, whereas Miles Morales has like half the content of Spider-Man. So you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. A little big for a DLC, but not enough new to warrant a full-priced game. Only rating it a 0 to counteract the Nintendo fanboys who are giving it a 10 despite it being mostly the same thing and having next-gen pricing for 20 frames per second 720p. This is something I keep consistently seeing. Are y'all fucking stupid? Where are y'all getting this 720p shit from, and where are you getting this 20 frames per second shit? The frame rate I can understand, because the game does drop to 20 frames occasionally, but it always corrects itself. The 720p thing that's annoying me, because the game does not run at 720p. The game runs at 900p, and if it has a dynamic resolution that drops to 720p, then sue me. 720p still looks fucking great. I don't care what anyone says. This is an interesting one. This is a popular one, actually, from Aaron Schiffer. Now, I'm going to go ahead and call bullshit on what he claims, and let's just go ahead and read it. Please check the credits of each game I worked as a graphics designer for Breath of the Wild and 3D audio locations and designs for Tears of the Kingdom. The way the company handled this title is very disgraceful. There were many days at the office we were told to reuse as much as we could from Breath of the Wild. A large portion of our staff was let go because there were so many reused assets. There was almost no need for a team that large to work on Tears of the Kingdom. I cannot put my name behind a project that was so clearly driven by greed and shame. Our players deserved a much better sequel than all these reused assets shoved into the same engine we previously used for Breath of the Wild. This company has fallen a long way, and as a part of the development team that actually cared and put forth a lot of effort, I'm asking that you stay away from buying this game, please. We cannot teach them that they can charge full price for a bundle of reused assets and then fire all the people that originally made these assets so they see no fruits of their labor. If they are allowed to get away with this, just imagine how poorly the next game will be made, and even the next. Growing up on Zelda, I just can't help but think I helped add to this horrible mishmash of reused assets and stolen hard work. So my reasoning for calling bullshit on this one is, if you go to his page, you'll see that he only has one rating, and the page was made right before the game released. And the only game he said anything about was this game, and just things do not add up. There's no credibility to this. I feel like if it was the actual developer, he would have said something on Twitter. He would have said something on some kind of social media platform. It wouldn't have just been a review left on Metacritic from an account that was just created. I call complete bullshit on it. Next up. This one's a little funny. A 0 from Floyd05. This review contains spoilers. Spoilers. You can't pet the dog. 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 That's an argument I can't argue with, because you cannot pet the dog, and that's a fucking shame. You know what? 0 out of 10. He's convinced me. 0 out of 10. 2 more reviews left before we end the video. A 0 from Narga Kuga, weird name. One of the worst Zelda games I ever played. It looks pretty. They did the music better than Breath of the Wild. They added new enemies to counter the not enough enemies problem, and some creative ideas. So he's given some credit to it. So, you think, okay, maybe I can actually give this review a little bit of credibility. Okay. But it runs poorly, even if capped to what feels like 30 frames per second. promises ultimate freedom, but don't even has a standard like customizing the controls to your liking. Okay, before we go any further, as far as customizing your controls, you can swap the jump and stamina buttons. You can swap those in the menu, and also on the Switch, as a hardware feature, you can completely customize the controls to any way you like. That is something that you can do. So that's an argument I don't really like. I think the game controls beautifully. I wish more games controlled the way that the last two Zelda games controlled. Anyway, back to the review. Overusing the same scheme over and over again, so 80% of all solutions is one of your 3 movement abilities, or the fuse ability, to be able to even deal moderate damage. The controls and menus are so overloaded and confusing because you are not able to make favorites on items or to exclude them to make it more pleasant. That is a legitimate criticism of the game. It is very clunky. There's so many materials that it becomes a problem going through them. You can reorder them by category, which helps a lot though. I just want to put that out there. Did he not know that you could reorder things by the category? Because that does actually save you a lot of time of scrolling through the materials. But that is a legitimate concern. There's not too much they could have done outside of adding a shortcut feature, but they're Nintendo. I didn't really expect a shortcut feature to begin with. The dungeons are nicely themed, but are just gated behind the NPC characters. Their abilities, which are mostly downgraded abilities from Breath of the Wild, and otherwise they are just bigger shrines and a boss. The bosses are good design. Use the limited abilities nice, and you can encounter the bosses in the underground after defeating them, which is a nice feature. The underground, the best area in the game, dark, hard, and rewarding. I don't think it's the best, but I think it is. It's a lot of fun if you're into a more challenging experience. The story is complete bullshit and butchers both the past Zelda lore and the lore presented in the game itself. Overall, the game feels like Nintendo tries to get into an open world RPG with Souls aspects and lost The Legend of Zelda Soul completely. Just make Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom a spin-off series instead of butcher the main series, and stop selling games for $70 for a console that can't run it properly because you messed up. So that is one review that I'm not going to be too angry about. I think there's a lot of legitimate points made in it, but I think the 0 is complete ass. So you shouldn't give it a 0. Give it at least a 5. Or a 4. I mean, he even said he liked the extra challenge of the bosses in the underground, in the depths. So like, he was even praising certain elements, even though he didn't like the game overall. So he should have at least give it something like a 5. The 0 just feels like butthurt. He's just mad that he spent $70 on the game, and that you need to take up a Nintendo and not the game itself, because the game itself, to a lot of people's worth that $70. It damn sure would have been worth $60. You got to learn how to review a game without reviewing the cost of the game. I could go on Steam and review some mediocre games that's fucking fantastic because I got them on sale for 90 cents. It's not, you don't do that. That's just, it doesn't make sense to review the game or criticize the game due to the cost of the game, whereas it makes sense to criticize the company itself. That I'm okay with. And finally, I saved the best for last. This may be one of the worst takes I've ever heard or read about a video game. One of the most biased takes I've ever experienced when it comes to any video game, not just the Zelda game, not just Tears of the Kingdom, any game period. This is a long one too. This is a 0 from Reeves Fran. Totally unfair. Had my review taken down 5 times. You just can't criticize Nintendo. That is bullshit. I criticize Nintendo all the time and never get shit taken down. There's a deeper reasoning for why he's had this review taken down. Let's continue reading, shall we? 1. Reeves Fran, May 14th, 2023. 3rd time posted. Keep getting deleted. See, already you can tell he lied about how many times it's gotten taken down. Or something fishy is going on. Nintendo was once the most powerful console in the market back in the Nintendo 64 days, when Ocarina of Time blew everything out of the water and was like nothing seen before. The PlayStation 1 was actually the cheap alternative. I would actually state now that is not entirely true. Although the Nintendo 64 had a more powerful CPU and graphics processor, it worked off of cartridges, which limited the amount of storage for the games, which actually hurt it significantly compared to the PlayStation, which is why the PlayStation sometimes had games that even looked and ran better, simply because they were optimized better. Whereas Nintendo, you had to compress data, meaning that the CPU was half the time spending time decompressing assets to use in the games. So although it was technically a stronger system, only certain games actually showed that, and Ocarina of Time was one of those games that actually showed the power of the Nintendo 64. Let's continue. Since then, the benefit of the doubt has been given to Nintendo for the past 20 years for failing to produce current gen quality gaming, while keeping current gen quality price tags. But now they've moved into movie making, and people are able to watch Super Mario in 4K UHD, breaking box office records and making a massive profit. For the company, it begs the question why they don't bother giving their consoles and games the same treatment. The excuse used to be, well, they took risk with the GameCube and don't have the means, and we need to stay loyal. Then with the Wii, it was, well, they're trying something different, trying to bring it back to its roots. And this is Nintendo's strategy for exploiting hungry fans and giving them lackluster releases out of beloved IPs by appearing to be the constant underdog that needs defending, when actually they're the bullies of the industry, raking in a lot of profit not going towards game making. See Reggie threatening leakers with quotes from Taken movie, reviewers being blacklisted, etc. to protecting their copyright. You have to, or a court will just laugh you out of the courtroom if you don't take your IP seriously. You can't really get mad at them for that, unfortunately. So here we are 3 decades later with a game that is basically a DLC of the previous, with next to no story, an empty hollow campaign that reads more like a Zelda mod from Minecraft than anything. At 900p 30 frames per second, at least he's got the fucking frame rate right. Good job. On a 10-year out-of-date engine with GameCube graphics that, if you chose to can be completed in an hour, sold for $70. Very few people can complete the game in an hour. Very few people complete that game in an hour. You have to completely master the mechanics of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in order to beat that game that fast. Only speedrunners have done it. So, bullshit on that statement. GameCube graphics, were you even around when the GameCube was out? Because these graphics are at worst Wii U quality. At worst Wii U quality. I would say they are better. They are definitely better than PS3, although maybe not PS4 quality. Give you credit, it's not PS4 quality, but you calling it GameCube quality, GameCube graphics, makes me not want to take you seriously. Imagine if Ocarina of Time was released with Atari graphics, SNES gameplay, and instead of needing to grow up or see Hyrule descend into chaos or complete the 8 temples to get to Ganon at any point, you could just walk to Hyrule Castle and have the credits roll, do some building to pass the time in between. That's one of the biggest, how do you criticize one of the biggest positives for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is that you can, if you choose to, run straight to the end game boss and fight him and beat the game, giving you a challenge while trying to do so. How does that become a negative? I don't know, but who knows? Would have won awards or been regarded as a masterpiece? No, you don't know that. You really don't. If the game was fun enough, who knows? I doubt it, but you're also saying a game that looks at most a generation removed, looks like a game from 4 generations ago. Somebody's full of shit. And if this game at 30 frames per second, 900p GameCube graphics GameCube ran at 480p at best. So stop with that GameCube shit. 10-year-old engine. The engine is as old as it's been updated. And the engine has definitely been updated between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom because it runs better and it has way more going on with its physics system. It's not the exact same engine. It was built upon. And with that said, are you going to hate on Majora's Mask? Because Majora's Mask literally used the same engine and built on it, just the same way as Tears of the Kingdom. Can be completed in an hour with only really 5 real temples to do, and was on the Xbox, say modded to be a Halo game, with critics call it Game of the Year. This is like, why are you bringing up Xbox now? You're bringing up apples to oranges. That's the word I'm looking for. It's apples to oranges. You can't compare this to Xbox. It's unfair to Xbox. Is honestly what it is, because Xbox has some fantastic games, some fantastic software out there, and the hardware is fantastic for third parties. And maybe if the mess that is Redfall had been modded to look like Mario and sold on Nintendo, it would be held as a masterpiece? Absolutely not. Have you heard of Hotel Mario, sir? Or the Zelda CDI games? If this was true, those games would have done well and not been eyesores back in the 90s. No, sir. Nintendo has gotten off easy for far too long, been half-assed and lazy, relying solely on fans' loyalty and critics not wanting to upset them for far too long. Critics don't care about upsetting Nintendo. Critics will upset Nintendo. We don't give a fuck. The franchise died with Twilight Princess. Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild argue with you on that. A Link Between Worlds argues with you on that. Even Triforce Heroes argues with you on that. You're fucking stupid. I'm sorry. They just decided after Skyward Sword to wait it out and rebrand it to a new generation of Zoomers who don't care for story, don't care about the campaign, don't care about a chain of temples and things you need to do to be able to get to the end. He's complaining about how non-linear the game is. Who don't care about 3 decades of video game history and its legacy. They just want to run around making giant wooden statues with penises and live stream their excitement pretending to be diehard fans. While the OG ones are shoved under a bus, this is the Dragon Ball Super of video games. The prime period has long gone, and the new fans despise it, can't play it. And what we have left is barely recognizable, nonsensical, pointless, overly complicated, strung out mess with barely any plot that's the IP in name only. In name only? People are saying the same fucking thing about Final Fantasy 16, and you're just as stupid as them. This game is a Zelda game through and through, much more than Breath of the Wild ever was. Breath of the Wild was barely Zelda. That game, if you said it was a Zelda game in name only, I would be like, okay, I kind of agree with that. I'm not going to give you too much trouble. Yes, there are Zelda things in it. There's things in it that make it a Zelda game. But I'll be like, okay. No, Tears of the Kingdom is thoroughly a Zelda game. Especially if you like the formulaic Zelda games of Ocarina of Time to Twilight Princess. There's a lot of formulas being used from those games. I can't take you seriously. And he ends it off by saying, and the funniest thing, when Nintendo decides to make a movie of it, it's going to be 4K UHD and bring back all the original references like the Mario one, to then return home to another cheap DLC mobile port game. Okay, no. This is a Zelda game. It is a Zelda game. It out. It gives you that sense of awe and adventure that Zelda games are known to do. This is just a bad take, man. Just a bad take. You sound like somebody who didn't play the game. You didn't talk about the game, which is probably why you had your review removed several times, because you didn't actually say a damn thing, a goddamn thing about the gameplay. So that's why you had your fucking shit removed several times, and I'm shocked that they allowed it to stay the 5th or 6th time, whatever time it was that you posted it. I'm a little shocked they let that remain, because it's still clear that your rating and your review had nothing to do with the game and just had everything to do with your grievances with Nintendo as a company. Go on YouTube, build an audience, make a video, and talk about that. Do that. Don't sit there and review bomb a game that you ain't never played. There ain't no goddamn way you played this game. No fucking way you played this game. If you played this game, you would have more legitimate, actual legitimate complaints. Like the other review I read, they actually had legitimate complaints, where my problem with that review is that it was a 0 and not a 5. You would have had actual legitimate complaints or criticisms about the game. Instead, you gave us a fucking novella with nothing in it about the game and everything about Nintendo as a company, and a lot of things about Nintendo that simply aren't true. There's a lot to criticize about Nintendo. You don't have to go very far to criticize Nintendo. You really don't. Nintendo has awful practices. Nintendo consistently releases good games though. So that's like you can't really attack them with the quality of their games, because the developers actually make good games. You just cannot sit there and criticize the game based on what Nintendo does. That is my thing. If you want to criticize Nintendo, let's criticize Nintendo. Shit, come talk to me. Let's criticize Nintendo. Let's talk about what's actually wrong with Nintendo. But don't take it out on a video game. Don't take it out on a good video game. Because although Nintendo as a company may be corrupt and may have a lot of problems, their developers, the people who work on these games and actually give their blood, sweat, and tears into developing these games, they deserve respect that you are not giving to them. I bet you think Majora's Mask is a masterpiece, but you're giving Tears of the Kingdom hatred based on the fact that it's built on the same engine, using a lot of the same assets. I've spent enough time on this. Honestly, this video has went on far too long, but I just wanted to get out here and give my take, because Tears of the Kingdom has become my favorite game of all time. So I'm a little biased. I am a little biased, but I have my reasons for why I love the game. The game does something to me that no game has done to me in years or even decades. Like, I was feeling the same kind of sense of awe and adventure that I felt with A Link to the Past. And A Link to the Past is like my second favorite game now, because it was my favorite, but now Tears of the Kingdom's out, and it's so well made. And it's for reasons that these people are complaining about, like the story. Like, I think the story is really good. It's the best Zelda story since Skyward Sword. And it's like right up there with it. Like, and I might like it a little bit better just because I like the gameplay, you know. And the world building. I don't get these negative reviews I've read. I don't understand why people would be this hateful about Zelda, about Tears of the Kingdom. A fantastic game from start to finish that I am currently going to play through again. And anyway, that's enough of me ranting. Thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, stay nerdy. I'm going to go play Tears of the Kingdom and record footage for this video. And I will see you guys next time. Stay nerdy.